When a writer asks me, where do I find the highest paying freelance writing clients? I already know they're approaching this ass backwards. I already know that they're just like, where are the clients that pay the most? And then I'll just go do that. And sometimes that happens from coming from journalism, where they're like, oh, the magazines that pay the most, I'll just go there and pitch them some ideas and get some work. With content marketing or content strategy or copywriting clients, that is totally not how it works. There isn't some magic database where all the pay rates are and you can figure it out. So we're gonna kind of go through this step by step about how our freelance writing clients are working out and how that high paying part works. So the first thing that we're talking about here is you are playing in the same league. You both have the same budget. So it's that you quote your rates and they're like, that sounds about right. You guys are both playing in the NFL versus someone playing in the Pee-wees and they're, playing cricket or something, right? Or you are playing football and they're playing, rugby. Like there's some kind of mismatch. It's not that you roll up and they're like, we'll pay you this number. And you're like, great. That does happen, but it's most commonly that you are quoting a price or talking about budget with them and there is alignment on that budget. Now, this comes from understanding their revenue. Most of the time, if we go after clients who have the right revenue, they usually have a budget for content strategy, content marketing, copywriting, all that good stuff. So the numbers I usually quote are you're usually around 5 million to 50 million for mid-sized companies, and you're usually around 3 to 10 million at the very minimum for startups. Now, both of those numbers are minimums. Your clients should make a minimum somewhere in there, and it depends on your niche. So for example, my best clients don't make 100 million. Like that's just not how it works. Or, if I'm going to go after science clients or biotech, they need at least 100 million to even start thinking about content marketing. So this is why we need to track that. So our minimum viable clients, those 5 to 50 million mid-sized companies or those $3 to $10 million in funding startups, they could be spending half that money on marketing or 1% of that money on marketing. We need to look at the content they're already creating, the things that they're already putting out, to then figure out how much they're spending kind of in a ballpark. You can kind of guess like, hey, if they're putting out a lot of content, so content marketing or copywriting is really important to them. Maybe they're not putting out a lot of content and it looks like they're kind of a baby company. Maybe they need content strategy because they need a plan. But we're kind of aligning on this idea of importance of content marketing or copywriting or content strategy. We are aligning on the idea with them, and that makes them a high-paying client. So kind of that first thing is that you're both playing the same sport. When you have a call or when you send them an email to ask about budget, they tell you they have a budget. Or it's something where you send a proposal and they're like, okay, that sounds right. Or there's another way to do it. There's kind of this trick that you can do where you get on a call and you're like, well, is your budget $5 or $50 million? And they're like, oh, ha, 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 that's so funny. And then they'll usually give you some kind of number where they're like, well, it's definitely not $5 or 50 million. It's probably like, we're thinking about this. Anytime you get on a call with someone who is like, well, why don't you just tell me your price? And like, or they get you to cough up a number, or they won't tell you what their budget is. And then you send a proposal and they say, you're too expensive. That's just a game. They're not playing in the same league. They're not serious about the content. They're just in there being like, well, let's try to get the lowest number possible and let's try to do this. That's not a high-paying client. A high-paying client is also a serious client. They're serious about the value of content marketing or strategy or copywriting. They're serious about their goals. They're serious about using content to achieve those goals. And they're serious about helping their audience. This is not a game of like, what's the least amount we could get for like the least amount of budget for the most amount of work, right? They're not in there kind of playing games. They're like, hey, we have a good budget because we value this thing. We want to put money into this thing because we see the importance of it. That's a really critical piece here. So your high-paying clients also have a certain attitude that they roll with when it comes to content. They have a certain way that they see the value in working with someone. They have a certain way of thinking about how they want the content to progress, how the project will work, or what kinds of goals what are they tracking to see if the thing is a success. So a lot of times it's not that you're going in and being like, who just will pour out the most money? That's just not how it works. I want to make sure I'm very clear about alignment. A lot of this is alignment. And like I said, when we use revenue for alignment, that really helps us zero in on the clients who likely have a budget and they're serious about content. A lot of times what ends up happening is two. So let's talk about two. There are some times where you will get a small business who pays well, but it's usually not a long-term client. So usually small businesses are not your client. Usually small businesses are, they just don't have the money. And if you quoted a professional rate, they would be like, that's too high. I don't have the money for that. So even if you end up getting a small business to sign on, it's likely that they're not going to be a long-term client. It's not someone that you're going to work with for years or 6 months. They might do like little one-offs, or they might end up doing like a project for a couple months. So even if you end up getting a high-paying small business, it's just the longevity isn't there. So your second thing is you really want to pay attention to, like, is this a retainer, or is this long-term work, or why are they creating the content, or what does this look like in the future with them, right? You can ask them some questions on a call, of course, and I think that will help. But you're also using these identifying characteristics of revenue and using that for budget. You're seeing how much content they're already creating. There's also a big thing with small businesses when you're looking at them, end up having maybe, like, you can just tell from the small business, there's like one office and there's like 10 people there, or they have like one marketing person. Now, if I'm going to a startup and I know it's a startup, right? It's a Series B startup and they have one marketing person, I'm like, great, they're overwhelmed. They definitely need help. But if I go to a small business and they have one marketing person, that's usually because they don't have a budget for anybody else. Or they have one person and a copywriter and that's it. So when you're looking at these things, be very careful that you're not categorizing like a small business as a startup, and that you're very careful about, like, if it was a business that's technically small, they should have multiple locations, or they should have a chain in multiple states, or it should be something that, like, even if every location has a small number of people, they're growing. They have other places to go. It's not just like one office where they're running everything. So you may end up getting something like that it pays well in the short term, but we're really looking for clients who see long-term possibility, and we have to go to larger clients. This is something that ends up being a big mistake with platforms. Like, I'll talk to certain types of writers who are coming from platforms, and a lot of it is like small jobs that might be sort of regular, but not quite. And this revenue, like, we need to play in that ballpark. Those revenue ranges are getting us to the right place. And like I said, those revenue ranges are your minimum viable client. Like, there are some niches where you need to have 50 million in revenue or funding as the minimum viable client. Like, that's the minimum they need to actually start doing content marketing. And I always like to use biotech or life sciences or healthcare, because they need a shit ton of money. They need $100 million usually in funding or in some kind of revenue to just get started with content marketing. I think that's the thing that gets missed, is when we're looking at these revenue ranges or small businesses or how this works, people end up looking at, like, oh, well, they have money. Like, oh, they have $1 million. Like, that's not enough money. You're missing the part where they have to pay salaries. They have to pay for the other people in the business. They have to pay for their own business expenses and office space and equipment and all that stuff, and benefits and health insurance. And then there's going to be budgets later on. So you have to remember there's all these things they have to pay for before they even get to a budget for content marketing or ads or whatever it is, right? So you want to think about it that way. Like, this isn't, it's kind of the same way as, like, if you were given like 500 grand, you're like, that's a lot of money, right? Let's say you were a copywriter or a content marketer and your business made 500 grand. Like, that's a lot of money, right? That's a lot of money. So you would have a budget for stuff, right? It's not the same thing. Like, that sounds like a lot of money to us, but if you're running a business paying the salary of 20 people, $1 million is a really small amount of money, right? If you are paying benefits, $5 million, or even a startup, right? You're trying to get more funding. You're trying to get the product off the ground. You're trying to, like, if it's a biotech place, you're trying to build a lab. You're trying to do testing. You have to hire people to do that. So if you kind of envision it that way, then you start understanding why these businesses need to have so much money, like revenue or funding, in order to even start having a budget for content marketing. So there's a big difference between a small business where they would be saying, like, oh yeah, our budget is $1,000. Like, that's not really a budget. It's just how much extra money they have right now. So kind of put that in the back of your mind. A small business is like, this is how much extra money we have right now. It's not the same thing as working with a client where every year they have a budget, or they finally increase their budget, or they have something where they're like, we need to spend this amount of money by the end of the year or we lose it. Like it is a after the fact amount of money that they use to market the business through content, through ads, or through whatever other kinds of services or products or whatever that they use. So once you kind of realize that that's after the fact, it makes a lot more sense why you need to kind of track how much money your clients really need in your different niches. And then the third thing here that we want to talk about is when we're kind of looking at these high-paying clients, your job is to go suss them out. Your job is to dig for them. It's not this publicly available information where you're just like, oh, this is like the perfect client. And I also want you to understand that there is a lot of perfect clients for you that are not perfect for other people, but they might look the same on the outside. So they might both be $50 million in funding fintech companies, but it works really well for you and not somebody else. So I want you to kind of get away from the idea of competition and get away from the idea of, oh my gosh, everybody's sending these LOIs. Like everybody's sending LOIs to very different types of companies, or they're targeting different revenue ranges, or they're doing different types of stuff that lead them into projects that make sense for where their goals are and not yours. So your job is to plant the seeds. Your job is to start tracking this information and looking for your best high-paying clients. Your job is to start collecting places where you can find revenue, and start collecting places where you find the right fit and see how much content they're making, and then start sending your LOIs. And then when you do projects, you get more intel, right? So as you're doing this, especially as you're moving up, if you're someone who's been around the freelance block, this is like your meatiest, biggest process. This is the thing that's really going to change your business, is getting to identify these best clients for you in your niches, the types of projects, the things that just all kind of make sense for you to pave your freelance path. This is the thing that I always talk about with my students as a new pair of glasses. It's the thing that really helps you see competitors or other opportunities, or where you're taking your business next because of XYZ data, right? This sounds kind of boring, I guess, sometimes when I'm like data and digging, and it sounds hard. It's not. Once you learn the process, it gets a lot quicker. You go yes, 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 no, no, no. You like look through a list and you know exactly which clients are a good fit for you. You look at their website and you're like, absolutely not. Yes, yes, yes. Immediately yes. Like you can look through a bunch of attributes and then say, oh, this is a good place to send an LOI. Then you can get on a call and set them through a next filter, right? You set them up for answering these questions, for listening to them, talking through. So your high-paying clients a lot of times are based on your own business, your own data, the things that you're seeing. And if you are troubleshooting this, if you're someone who's like, ugh, I'm trying to like figure out what I've been doing for the last few years and how to do it, go back and look at your LOI spreadsheet and start tracking things moving forward. Like who's answering your LOIs, why are they answering, what are they saying on calls, and really be particular about the clients that you talk to. Instead of getting on a call, or instead of getting on LinkedIn or your website and being desperate, being like, I'll just do whatever you want, whenever you want to, I'll do 24-hour turnaround. Instead of that, really listen to your clients. Pay attention to what they're saying. Write down the important phrases and start looking for that in your next set of clients. So this kind of troubleshooting activity comes from kind of looking at what's been going on in your business, what things have been successful, what haven't been successful, what are the projects that you want to do, and then looking at which niches would create those projects, right? That's a lot of like what's already on their website. Are the clients I'm going after already creating that? Do I need to kind of look here? Do they need more revenue? Is it a different niche that I haven't explored yet, right? So there's a lot of different things that I think when you're troubleshooting this process, once you kind of see the path, once you wear that new pair of glasses, you're like, oh, obviously it's boom, 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 all these things, right? This is something that I often talk about with Wealth Lab and Runway students, is that you're getting through this new pair of glasses, you're adjusting the prescription, and then you can see it. Like you see these, it's like you train your eye to find them in all these different places, and then you're like, oh, client, not client, client, not client. And that's the whole point that we're getting to, is where we spend less time marketing, but we still get more marketing done. When we get more marketing done, we get to be pickier, and we get to suss out which clients are right for us, like which ones are actually playing in the NFL instead of the Pee-wees, which ones make sense for our goals and the content projects we want to do. And the last thing I want to mention here is that a good client will always negotiate with you. This is something that I've had burned in my brain over the years, is a lot of times price is not the thing. Price is not like the major factor. It may seem like it because people are like, we can't do that price. But most of the time, if you have a good client, they will say like, man, you know, you're out of our budget. We would love to work with you, but it turns out our budget is this. Is there any way that you can work at this rate, or can we negotiate? Or, you know, we'll get back to you later to see if our budget changed, or they'll ask for a referral. Like there's some kind of thing where they will tell you that they either want to negotiate with you, or they're like, hey, do you know anyone who can work with us? Like they're interacting with you. They're not just like, ew, your price is too high, bye. That just doesn't happen with good clients. Like good clients treat you like a human being. They're really respectful of your time. They're respectful of your experience. They're looking to work with you, so they're willing to negotiate. And even if you quote a price that's higher than that. So there have been times where I've had a client where their price was lower, like 50% lower, and I was like, hey, my normal rate is this. And they still would try to negotiate with me, even though my rate was more than double, or my rate was then like, theirs was like, they changed their budget and they're like, okay, we can give you 75%. And I was like, no, I really want 100% for this type of work. So they'll still negotiate with you. So I kind of want you to think about having the balls to do that too. So one, good clients will always negotiate with you if they want to work with you. And two, there are lots of clients, red light or otherwise, who will come back and negotiate with you for whatever reason. Like they have the balls to come in there and be like, will you work at half the rate? Like you should have the balls to stick to your rate, right? You should have the balls to be like, nope, I'm doing this. Or you should, you know, not feel like you have to do a price cut or a discount for everything. You should have the balls to be like, nope, I know what my work is worth, and moving forward. So don't kind of get that, you know, kind of get that fear in your mind about that clients will always negotiate with you, or that clients will leave if you say the wrong price. Like good clients will negotiate with you, and then you can make a choice whether you want to take that price or not. So your high-paying clients, we're looking for these attributes. We're looking for trends. You have to make sure you're tracking this stuff, because it really helps you hone your eye and find the right clients for you and work on the projects you want to work on without burning yourself out or getting to overwhelm. So there's also this other thing that I put together that has to do with high-paying clients and identifying them and building your website and LinkedIn to attract them, but also asking the right questions on calls, is my free Seasoned Veteran cheat sheet. If you haven't grabbed it, go to mandyellis.com/cheat sheet to grab it. It gives you all these little gems that very old seasoned writers like myself, or people who have been around the block, use all the time in their business to get high-paying clients. So I want you to remember, there's no like magic island where these high-paying clients hang out. It's really learning a bunch of different kind of connect the dots for these high-paying clients. And it's also learning to connect the dots in your own business versus everybody else's. Of course, there are overarching things. There are overarching green lights. There are overarching red lights. There are revenue ranges that we want to kind of pay attention to. But really the data from your own business is like the richest kind of gold that you can get. So you need to be making progress, sending those marketing things, paying attention to what's going on in your business, and really aligning with those clients who are playing the same sport as you, right? They're speaking the same language. They're talking about the project. They're serious about the goals, serious about the value of content. So if you found this helpful, make sure you subscribe. I put out these videos all the time. And there will be another video coming soon about all things freelance writing and copywriting. But if you want to have a question, if there's something where you're like, I want to know more about this, about high-paying clients, or I'm confused about that, make sure to drop a question below and let me know. So I hope this was helpful, and I will see you soon.